watching episode 3 of Moments with Meals. Here, you're gonna listen to life experiences that will motivate you to know that there's always a green light at the end of the tunnel. Here is the story of 4 Nigerian stowaways set out for Europe on a rudder of a tanker. They had no idea that they were bound for Brazil and a 2-week ocean voyage that would nearly kill them. Here is the story. A little after midnight on the 27th of June, Romer Friday gathered up the food he had been collecting for a few months and set out in the dark for a large commercial port in the city of Lagos, Nigeria. Earlier that day, Friday spotted a 620-foot, which is equivalent to 190 meters, tanker dock at the port and decided that it would be the best ship to deliver him to Europe. Friday was aiming for the tanker Rudder, the only accessible point on its massive hull for a person who isn't supposed to be aboard. There was no way to bridge the gap from the docks of the Rudder other than convince a fisherman to ferry him across. He was a holy man, that fisherman. Friday recalled, he did not ask for money. He could see that I wanted to leave. The fisherman slid up to the Rudder and Friday, 35, pulled himself up, holding his foot back behind him on the rope. As he steadied himself, he saw to his surprise 3 faces in the dark. He was the last of 4 men with the same idea. I was scared at first, Friday said, but there were black Africans, my brothers. Fearfully of being caught, the 4 men perched silently on the rudder for the next 15 hours. At 5 p.m., they felt the ship's giant engine shudder to life. Over the din, they shouted a few words. They were all aiming for Europe. They expected to be shipmates for as long as a week. Fearful of being caught, the 4 men perched silently on the rudder for the next 15 hours. The tanker, called the Caned Wave, pushed out from the port and headed to the sea, the beginning of their perilous 2-week ocean voyage that would bring them, the stowaway, close to death. Day 1. As Lagos resided behind them, the men tried and failed to find comfortable positions on the rudder, which moved constantly as it steered the ship. There were precious little space to stand, and the only place to lie was in 1 or 2 small nests strung precariously over the water by precious stowaways. They assume it can be hard to understand from the outside what drives a person to risk their life on a rudder or a rickety boat across the Mediterranean, but the decision comes easy when you have already lost hope, Friday said. In Nigeria, there are no jobs, no money, no way for me to feed my younger brothers and my mother, he said. I am the firstborn son and my father died 20 years ago, so I should take care of my family, but I cannot. Instead, he had spent 3 years living on and off the street in Lagos, trying to find work. Each day in Nigeria was a gauntlet of crime and sin, he said. People fighting, killing each other, terrorists attacking, kidnapping. I want a brighter future than that. Perched next to Friday on the rudder of the tanker was Tangor whcih, and a Pentecostal minister, businessman, and father of 2 whose peanut and palm oil farm had washed away in a devastating flood that hit Nigeria last year. There had been no fallback or insurance to cover the loss. My business was destroyed and my family became homeless, and that was the genesis of my decision to leave, he said. whcih's decision became final after the recent presidential election, which was made by anomalies and allegations of vote rigging. The election had been our hope, he said, but we know Nigeria well. We know the system is corrupt. So without telling his family, he left his sisters at home one night and set out for the port where he knew Kent's Wave was waiting to depart. Nigeria had seen an exodus of people like whcih and Friday in the recent years via regular and irregular routes, driven by recessions and record unemployment levels. Many travel across the Sahara and Mediterranean where at least 1,200 Nigerians have died already this year, according to the UN. Some choose to stow away. Last year, 3 men climbed on the Rudder in a similar fashion to whcih and Friday, and their journey took them 2,500 miles to Canary Islands, an entry port to Spain. Friday and whcih believed they were following the similar route. With their 2 companions, William and Zeze, they passed the first few days on the ship in a mixture of boredom, discomfort, and fear, talking only a little prayer often and trying to stay awake as the Ken wave pushed into the vast stretch of the South Atlantic for the 3,500 miles journey to Brazil. Day 5. In some ways, ship stowaways are safer than those who cross parts through the Sahara on foot or the Mediterranean on rickety wooden boats. But as day 5 passed, Friday and whcih began to reckon with their specific danger of the situation. They were already weak from rationing their food and tired from lack of sleep. They tied a rope around their waist when they needed to pee off the side of the rudder. When the water was rough, waves would lash them. We're all scared of the big waves, whcih said. I have never seen the ocean before, but I used to watch documentaries about storms and I have seen big ships rocked from side to side by waves. Sleep was visually impossible. You try not to close your eyes, Friday said. The rudder turns 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You have to constantly be alert. The net came loose and had to be inexpertly refastened. The lay in them again, but Friday thought only of being awoken by the sudden feeling of falling and heat of cold below. If the net will break, you will go straight into the water and you're gone. And you really were gone. There is no chance of rescue at sea when no one knows you're lost. Day passed into night, into day again. The men grew weaker and stopped talking entirely. Friday kept track of the time on his wristwatch. He tried to remember the day the nets came loose again and were refastened. The food was rationed in small parcels, the water in small sips. Their mouth began to dry out. The stomach ached. They tried to remain vigilant and try not to fall in. Day 10 brought the moment the four had been quietly dreading. Sometime in the morning, they ate the last of their food and drank the last of their water. All four were already painfully hungry from spacing out the migraine rations they had. This was the hardest moment of all, whcih said. My mouth was dry and completely cracked. For the first time in my life, I really understood the meaning of water. There were few lighter moments. whcih told his brother he was praying for rain and they laughed at him. What are you going to do with rain? They cried. How will you collect it? Rain was only dangerous to them. They cheated. The laughter subsided. Hour by hour, they became more testy. Time seemed to move more slowly. The next day, Friday managed to attach a torn cellophane biscuit wrapper to a length of rope and lowered it into the ocean, he said, and collected small mouthful of salty water for them to drink. The leaked toothpaste. On day 12, sick of salty ocean water, one of the other men began to vomit from the side of the rudder block. He was looking straight down into the water and vomited. Friday said he had no strength to lose himself. He was about to fall. I was the only person who had strength left and I had to grab hold him. The men were entering the face of hunger and thirst that brings you close to death. In an effort to distract him, Friday began to sit on the edge of the rudder alone, one leg hanging either side, scanning the ocean in vain for anything to interrupt the long, unbroken line of the horizon. What the ocean gave him on the 13th day of the voyage was a whale. The first time in my life I've seen such a thing, he said, laughing at the memory. If I told anyone at home I'd seen a whale, they would say I'm lying. But I sat on the rudder and saw a whale and I forgot I was hungry and thirsty. I watched the whale and it was like watching creation, a holy moment. Day 14. As the first light appeared on the horizon on day 14, the voyage, Friday was back on the edge of the rudder, staring into the distance when he felt the ship's mighty engine begin to slow down. Then in the dim light, in the distance, he saw what looked like land, then building, then a boat. The Ken wave was topping off the coast to take on a fresh crew, and the resupply boat spotted the men. "Do you know where you are?" came a shout. Friday tried to shout back that he had no idea, but his throat was too dry. The boat left, then 2 hours later, in a clear light, a police just appeared. An officer stretched out a bottle of water to Friday. "You are in Brazil," he said. Safely back on dry land, the migrants used borrowed phones to call their families. Friday and Yeye, two fellow migrants, Williams and Zeze, decided to take up an offer of returning directly to Nigeria. Friday and Yeye decided to make Brazil their home. "We are joyful to be here," Yeye said. "It is a new beginning. They will likely face challenges. Migrants have automatic rights to healthcare and all the benefits in Brazil, but African migrants often face racism and struggle to find well-paid jobs." Friday and Yeye had been taken into a shelter in Sao Paulo and are being assisted by a Catholic mission, Missal Paz, with Portuguese lessons and all the support. Yeye wants to start a new business and bring his wife and children over. Friday is focused on the more intermediate future. "I am in a new place. I'm trying to adapt. I'm trying to learn the language," he said. The first journey he had made out of Nigeria had nearly killed him, but as days passed after his rescue, he felt the hopelessness that had dogged him home begin to ache, he said. Many people do face this in life, and that is their story. Thank you for watching. You're watching Moments with Mills. Please subscribe for more episodes. Next, episode 4.